Okay, we're live. So, hi, and thank you for joining. We're here for our third panel discussion with the Ascend, and our topic today is stepping into fear and out of the comfort zone. Super excited to dig into it. We've been here a few minutes already just chit-chatting, so now we're going to get into it. Before we do that, I'm Catherine. I'm the founder of the Ascend. We're a boutique coaching agency, and what we do is help people find the right support to be happy, to thrive, and live and lead in alignment with their strengths and their values. And we do that by matching people to the right coach for their needs and personalities. And here I am with three of the awesome coaches that we work with at the Ascent. So I'll leave the floor to you guys to introduce yourselves so that everyone watching can know who they're listening to. Abby, do you want to take the mic?
Yeah, thank you, Catherine. Looking forward to talking to everyone today as well. I'm Abby. I'm a peak performance strategist. I have been doing what I do for the last few years now, and before that, I worked in banking. But I take a three-pronged approach, looking at psychology, physiology, and productivity to help teams and execs perform at their very best on a sustainable basis. Good to be here today.
Thanks, Abby. Mark, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. Nice to meet you all. My name is Mark de Stadler. I'm an executive communication coach. So I really help individuals fine tune their executive presence, their stakeholder engagement, and potentially key presentations or places where they need to be more influential. For me, it's all about helping you not only with mindset, but more importantly, how do you deliver your message in a clear, concise, and engaging manner? And that's really what I bring beyond the executive coaching element that I've been doing for the last 12 years at an international basis. So nice to meet you all.
Thanks a lot, Mark. It's good to have you here. Nancy?
Yes, thanks, Catherine. It is wonderful to be here. Hi, everyone. So my name is Nancy. I am a leadership and team coach, and I focus a lot on women empowerment and confidence in just actually really that they can step in, lean in to be the leader that they really are here to be. So thank you. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot. I love the work that all three of you do, and I'm excited to be here. So to kick things off, what do we stand to gain from stepping into fear?
Well, shall I go? I will start us off. I'd say what don't we stand to gain could be a good question, because we always tend to look at the downsides of what could happen if we do step into fear. But there's so many upsides that we won't know about unless we give it a go, and opportunities that we would never have had otherwise. So for me, it's really about that.
Yeah, I concur. Look, I work with people who have a big fear. It's around presenting, right? And that for a lot of people is even more fearful than death itself, as a lot of the research tends to show. But for a lot of individuals, I think not stepping into your fear, you actually, once you do, you actually realize that it was all in your head. And in many cases, it's never going to be as near as bad as you're going to think it'd be. In actual fact, it's very rewarding once you do. So I think I concur wholeheartedly with what you said, Abigail, is if we're not taking the opportunity to do it, then we really are missing out in terms of our careers and our fulfillment, you know?
Yeah, and I agree. Also, I look at fear as that edge into your out of your comfort zone into more growth. So when you can lean into that fear and actually act and do it, you find out it's not what you thought was a cliff is actually a step. And then you're able to take more steps after that one step.
Yeah.
Then I was thinking earlier, there's some fears like what you just said, Mark, having the fear of public speaking or of doing a big presentation or of talking to your boss for a specific thing. But there's also some fears that we have that we don't maybe identify. And obviously putting it into my own terms, there are some things in the business that maybe I don't accept or I don't admit that I'm afraid of doing. So how do we actually identify fear versus, oh, I don't have the time, or the excuses that we make up?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I think
That
for me,
is.
it's been in my business, starting my own business after leaving banking. It was that you keep putting things off. But if you write down what you want to achieve, and if you haven't done it after 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, and you look at the excuses you've had each time, like you say, Catherine, it could be didn't have enough time, or something urgent came up, or whatever else. Best thing you can do is kind of write down at each time why you didn't do something, and then look back and go, actually, there's definitely some avoidance going on there. And you can spot the patterns. So I think that there's an element there of self-awareness that needs to come up. And most of the time when we are trying to, when we are in that fear of doing something, it could be because we're worried about it not working out. Maybe we're delaying it, so we do everything else. We say we don't have enough time, but we have got enough time to scroll Instagram. All those kind of things come up as well. So I think it's awareness first. By doing that exercise, something like that can be quite useful.
Yeah. Yeah, I also think that what came to mind as you were just describing it, Abigail, was this idea of having a clear purpose. I've got a friend of mine at the moment who's working in the States on teenage programs, which is all about helping them go into the wild. And one of the things we were talking about was by them all having a clear purpose on why they were wanting to do it, suddenly these kids were now willing to do abseiling and all kinds of different things. And I think maybe the thing that sometimes stops us from actually stepping into our fear or going out of our comfort zone is our purpose isn't clear enough. So, if we can start to get clarity around why this thing we want to do is important, that could maybe certainly start to help the negative mindset or the imposter syndrome that sometimes creeps in and finds excuses very easily, right?
Yeah, and I want to tag on to this because what came to mind for me was the avoiding. So avoiding a key conversation. And I see this a lot, avoiding giving feedback, hard feedback, because they're afraid of not being liked, to really giving hard feedback that the other person's not going to receive it well, or they don't know how to give it in a way that the other person can hear it. So there's that fear. And so then they avoid the conversation. And then the same patterns continue. Or dealing with the status quo because you're not having those hard conversations because you're afraid for a number of reasons of having them.
That's I completely agree with both of you, Nancy and Mark. And I think, that links to, I guess, when you're going to do something, it goes back to what you said, Mark, about having purpose. Even if you're having a difficult conversation, it's what are the benefits going to be of having this for me, the other person? Why are we doing this? And if you have that in mind, it just means that you kind of ignore all the ups and downs along the way. You're just focused on that end goal, and you kind of do what it takes to get there, and everything else gets out your way. And I think, even for all of us having our own businesses, there's been a why, a big vision and purpose. And that's meant all those other obstacles that would otherwise get in the way if you think of them step by step, kind of become irrelevant. You just kind of are going for what you want to go for.
Yeah, and I also think if you think about the negative mindset, if you such an interesting exercise I always take with our clients is get them to write down, take a piece of paper and go all the positive against negatives. And generally people who are quite risk adverse, they'll have one positive and then 99 reasons why it's not going to work out. And I think that's sometimes half the problem, right? Is if you're somebody who's analytical and you're weighing up your options, if there's 99% you're going to fail, why would you even try? And I think sometimes for people, it's helping them populate that right-hand column of all the reasons why this thing's going to work. As you just described there, Abigail, is this idea that the purpose isn't just, oh, I want this, but why do I want it? What's all the positive elements that come with it? And I think that's sometimes a lot of the work we probably find ourselves doing is helping people cultivate that more, what things are actually going to go well. It's not always going to end in doom and gloom. And I think that can sometimes be quite helpful.
Yeah, I like that because typically they're in this very narrow view of what's going to happen. And with coaching, we're able to expand that aperture so they can see the bigger picture.
Yeah. And I guess it all comes down to it's human nature, right? So back in caveman days, you needed to know all the risks and the threats, because if you didn't, you were going to maybe kill yourself or get eaten by some kind of giant reptile or something. So we're trained to look for the bad and the negatives and the risks. It's just the way we are. We're conditioned, and so it keeps us safe. So staying in our comfort zone, essentially, not going into that unknown, stepping into that fear, is a way of keeping us safe. With status quo, we're going to be okay.
Yeah. I agree. And interesting enough, a lot of the work that I've been doing, especially with females, is the fact that they carry such a stronger imposter syndrome sometimes than men do. You know, as a guy growing up in South Africa, where we would just be whatever you wanted to be. Where with my sister, she had to be the best at everything she did. And if that didn't exist in what she was trying to do the first time, it almost was like, no way, if I'm not going to be the best person at doing it. And sometimes it's also our upbringing and the environment and cultures that we grow up that weighs us down, sometimes even more. And, you know, as I must admit, as a man, as I started to have conversation with my female friends, just to realize, like, God, your world is so much more intense than mine because of the mindset and the conditioning that you've had to have. And I, you know, sometimes that's where I just want to just go, yeah, life is so much easier having that simple options. And I think that's something that we need to realize is we're carrying potentially a lot of stuff from the world that we've grown in, and how can we unlock and let go of some of that, you know?
Love that, Mark. That's so true. I think everyone probably on this call relates to that, all the females on the call. But it's so true. And it's, you know, it does. It's extra effort and work, and then what if I fail? That reinforces that imposter syndrome that exists.
So much
And then that just self-deprecation, or that self-beating up because you're not perfect, or you made a mistake, or, oh my gosh, they're gonna yell, you know, I'm gonna get in trouble for making this mistake, or whatever that is, because I'm not perfect. And it's a lot to carry.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
It really, and I think that was the kind of the big learning where I was shocked to realize how many times in the day those moments of perfection existed in some of my female friends' mindsets, where I was like, God, that must be so tiring. Like to have those moments. I might have that moment once or twice a week, let alone where, you know, talking to my friends, they were having moments on an hourly basis. And I was like, Jesus, that really does show you the difference in the challenges that exist in sometimes in a male-dominated environment, and how men need to become aware of that, you know. And I think that sometimes which was quite of an enlightening moment is what needs to happen from a fear perspective, you know. That's
great, Mark. It's constant. It's a constant thing. It's not even hourly. I think it just is ongoing for a lot of people.
And I mean, I wonder sometimes, is the fear of just being yourself, like allowing yourself to be yourself and being afraid to be judged for what you are, and that's mixed in with, you know, so many things. I mean, even, you know, now this is only the third call. We don't know, like, the first time that I did one of these calls at the beginning, I did like a meditation before to make sure, be me, you know, don't like put on an act, or like if you're talking to somebody, not that you want to ask something, but even if you look at statistics of like which women apply to, like how men and women apply for jobs. So you have, you know, you need 3+ years experience, you need these qualifications, you need that. Like there's, I don't know the stats exactly, but the difference in those two is just huge. Anyway.
Yeah, you're right. That one. Sorry, go on, Nancy.
I was going to say, that one is huge. Whereas men will apply for a job when they don't have all the criteria, and they'll just go for it without even thinking of it.
All we need is 50%. All we need is supposedly around about. That's what the stats were showing, is men only feel they needed about 50% of what was actually there in the job description, and they were going to blag it. They were like, no, I'll learn on the job.
Whereas women, and the women felt like they wouldn't apply unless they had 100% of what was on the list.
Something like the 90 percentile, which was really interesting.
You know, and what was fascinating too is because I know this and I'm aware of this, and it was in retrospect that I hadn't gone for a position knowing this. And a colleague had less experience than me, and he went for it, and it was that, oh my gosh, I fell into this, even though I know that statistic.
Yeah.
Because I was missing one criteria. I was like, oh man, that was eye-opening.
Yeah.
And that's probably
So
the
it's sorry, I don't want to
importance, right?
derail this and turn it into something, but I think what I want to say is that's sometimes what we got to realize is some of the stuff that we're carrying as a result of our upbringing, and we need to realize that's sometimes stopping us from being able to step out of our comfort zone more often, is because of how these things have sometimes been embedded in our psyche, and more importantly, how we operate. So when we can identify that, I think that helps us unlock the ability to move forward, which is something I see myself doing a lot with my clients, is helping them realize that.
Yeah.
And you're right, Mark. It's there's so many different reasons why we don't move, we don't jump into the fear. For example, like you say, upbringing. In terms of parents, you could have one parent who's really risk averse. My mum's always saying, "Be careful." Even if I go to the gym, "Oh, be careful." Don't all these things. My dad was much more, would just jump in and do all sorts of things. So you kind of get those tendencies and conditioning from an early age. And then it's about, do you recognize that? And are you going to do something about it? Are you even aware that that's what's conditioned you? Or are you going to kind of just carry on? And the key thing, I think, is we can all change at some point. A lot of people say like, "Oh, I have this because of this reason, or because of my upbringing and something else." And, to talk about like fixed and growth mindset, I really believe that you can change at any point. There were times when I wouldn't even do, I'd hate to do public speaking. Primary school, junior school, I was fine. Secondary school, became more self-conscious about how people judge you. And then after that, now I do it for work. But in terms of presenting and all those kind of things, throughout secondary school, there was a time where I hated it. There was one time where I remember someone said, "I thought you were going to cry," when I was reading my cards, going through something. So I think we can evolve if we want to, right?
Yeah. Well, I see it for the last 12 years of working with people, because think about presentation is really one of those clear things where you see someone break through. And I think the interesting thing is people don't realize is, for us to become competent in something, if you think about something you're good at, if I said to either one of you, what is something you can do in your sleep without thinking about it? And, think about that right now. And then my next question to be is, how many times have you done this thing? And usually the answer is thousands of times. Well, Of course, that's why you're competent at it. And I think people need to realize, for you to build capability outside your comfort zone is not just watching a YouTube video and trying it once. It's actually consistently trying something over and over and again and refining it. And then that's when you start to build a bigger comfort zone and greater self-belief, and you have the ability to kind of jump through. And I think that's what people need to realize is, yes, you're going to try it once and you're not going to succeed, but that's the whole point of learning. You can't just assume, "Oh, mate, I tried it once and it didn't work, so I'm rubbish." And you're like, yeah, we're all exactly the same now. So
yeah, that's such a great point, because a lot of people think if they try it, they're going to have it. It's going to be great. And then they give up, as opposed to, oh, yeah, the first time's not supposed to be great.
Yeah.
Let's reflect on it. What can we do different next time to make that time even better? Like working towards mastery. It's not perfectionism, it's mastery. So self-mastery takes that awareness, like you were saying, Abigail, and then reflection and going back in and doing it again, even if I really messed up the first time and the second time and the third time, just to keep going back in with that open mind. It's like, okay, what can I learn? And how can I get even better in this skill or whatever it is?
Yeah.
But it does take a mindset shift within somebody. Once you have the awareness, once you've identified, okay, this is something that I want to do, I'm afraid of doing it for XYZ reasons. That doesn't mean it doesn't take a lot of effort or a big mindset shift to actually go and do it. So from, in your experience, when you're working with your clients or in your own life, what does it take? What are some easy tools, or what are some exercises that you do with people to be able to break through those barriers, kind of, the feel the fear and do it anyway? It sounds so simple, but actually it's not always so simple.
There are two things that I do. And what first thing is that I remember this quote that was, one day what you thought was impossible will become your warm-up, which I really like, because I read it years ago. And then I go, oh, actually, that is true, because there are things now that I don't even think about. And it's just, it's that unconscious competence that years ago I was like, okay, like I was saying, I need to do a presentation. I need some little cards and I need to read a script. Whereas now I don't need that anymore. So it's the practice that Nancy and Mark were both talking about. And the second thing is what I would do is just keep that in mind. But the second thing is when you go to the gym and you think I'm going to try and lift something and you go, I'm going to lift something really heavy, just, try it out. And then when you go back down and you go from a certain weight to something lower, that lower weight feels like you're, lifting nothing. It's easy. So I always think, do something so ridiculous that you're definitely you've got no expectation of succeeding, but you might succeed. But then when you do something less scary, it's no problem at all. So, go and do something where if it's public speaking, you go and do a talk to a ton of people and you know that you might bomb. But then when you have to do small meeting presentations or whatever else, it's not as intimidating for you. So that's what I tend to do generally in my life.
Yeah. I can resonate with that. And if anything, the thing that I would say is choose an environment where you feel psychological safety, where if you do bomb, it's not bombing in front of your investors or your clients. You're bombing in a pub where you've gone to like a speaker's corner and you know what, don't really care about anybody's who's out there who might be having a perception. So I think choose your environment. Something that I do with my clients, which is really interesting. There's a classic old model in coaching called be, do, get. And you identify what it is you want to get. Then you identify all the things you need to do, like all the activities you need to actually physically do to get there. But this is where people always miss the trick, as you've identified, Catherine, is they go, cool, I know what I need to do and I know what I want. So I'm going to go and do it. And then they try once and they're like, I don't like this. This is not great. I'm going to stop, because they didn't focus and help identify who they need to be. And that's that mindset piece. And I think if anything, too many leaders are focusing on coaching their team members on what they need to do. Everybody knows generally what they need to do. The problem is they haven't been coaching them on their mindset and giving them that self-belief and developing that tenacity and that grit within the individual to actually do the activity. So I think that really is an important part. If it's on your own or if you're coaching others, focus on coaching mindset and who they need to be, I think.
Yeah. And so for some of the things I do is reminding them to breathe, because when we're in fear, we're not grounded. And so breathe, take some deep breaths, get grounded, and then just get really clear on your intention. Why are you doing this? So if they're going into a meeting or they're having that feedback talk or they're going to present, get really clear on being centered and grounded in their own body and set their intention and release the worry about what other people are going to think, but really stretch into that uncomfort and get really focused and clear. But breathe. Breathing is really, really important to get out of that fight or flight part of the brain where fear is very active.
Interestingly, Nancy, what you said, though, I think is one of the key drivers why people have fear. It's worrying about what other people are going to think. That for me is the one that comes up. People don't want to do something because they're worried about what other people are going to say and do and judge them. And it's like, actually, a lot of the time people are thinking, oh, I wish I could do that. Or I wish I was going to, I don't know, whatever it can be. Sometimes other people don't have the courage to do those things. And it's just about trusting yourself and trusting the process, sometimes just going for something.
Yeah, I think I resonate with that, because if you look at sports, some of the work that I've done with professional sportsmen and women it's always about process, because the process is what allows you to operate in a highly stressful environment. Because if your body hasn't gone through this process a number of times, when you're under stress, it all comes apart. And that's why you always see the most successful sportsmen and women out there tend to be able to operate in those highest peak moments, because fundamentally they've made that putt 1,000,000 times before. It's not the first time they're doing that action. So I think that's the other thing we've got to realize is if we're going to go into a highly stressful environment, we need to make sure that we've got the process down pat, because the stress and the anxiety itself generally will overwhelm you, as you can sometimes see on television when watching anything like that, you know.
I like how you brought that up, because then we can also vision forward us being successful in that situation.
Yeah.
What does that look like? And imagine us performing, or whatever it is that we're going in to do that's scaring us, that it's actually going well.
A forward-thinking vision of the end result.
Yeah,
that's really nice, Nancy.
I'm almost feeling like the fear right now for a lot of the things that you said right now just make me think of, I play guitar and I've done like a few performances and things like that, and I'm terrified. Like, I've done it, I did it in school, I've done it for parties and things like that, usually friends or friends of my parents asking to whatever. And I'm even just thinking about it right now makes me a bit anxious, and I'm not an anxious person, but it's that fear of, what if I'm not good enough, the judgment, all of those things. But when there is repetition, so when I know that I have something coming up and I know what I'm going to play, and I practice and I practice and I practice, I'm still terrified, scared shitless when I get on stage, but I know what I'm doing, so it still kind of works. And every time that I do it, it gets better, and I get less scared and I get more comfortable. So I guess it's kind of a fine dance, and getting comfortable with being uncomfortable as well.
yeah.
I think so. And what really is, like, when we think of we're talking about the comfort zone, but what is the comfort zone? Is the comfort zone actually really comfortable? Because most of the time when we're not pushing ourselves and not, pushing our limits or doing things that can actually move the needle, it's not so comfortable, because it comes with a whole other set of emotions that can be, feeling like we're not fulfilling our potential, or like we're procrastinating too much, or like, all of these things that come back again, I guess, to awareness and knowing what we want and asking ourselves the right questions, right?
Yeah. Look, I think our comfort zone can actually go smaller. Think what COVID did for a lot of individuals out there, me included, right? I wasn't in a training room for almost 2 years. And the first time I went in, I'd been doing this for 12 years. And the first time I went in, it was like my first time. So I think that's the other thing, is as you identify, Catherine, I don't think it becomes uncomfortable because it's shrinking and the world starts to getting a little bit smaller. And I think that's when the anxiety starts to rise up a little bit, because if we're not constantly trying to grow, guess what? It doesn't stay stagnant. It starts to go smaller.
Yeah, that reminds me of, again, what you say, Mark's exactly true. I think the first face-to-face I did after 2 years, I was like, oh, I can't remember what to do. I'm so used to just sitting in front of the computer. I need to people are going to see me, so I need to, think about what I'm doing with my feet and my hands now. There's all sorts of other things to think about. It's and you're right. It's again back to the practice, right? We get out of practice. Same as going to the gym. You can't go to the gym once and get a six-pack. You've got to keep going constantly, and ongoing, and maintenance is keeping up a certain level. But then if you want to grow, you need to do a little bit more and get out of that comfort zone. And a lot, Catherine, when you say about the discomfort of being in the comfort zone, there comes a point sometimes where the discomfort becomes so much that the balance tips the other way, and you have to get out. You have to do the jump out of that comfort zone.
And I love how you said it was a dance. Like, courage is having the fear and doing it anyway. So it's that dance with the fear and leaning in. And I can also relate to both of you with presenting, like, for the first time after not for so long. It was weird. I had to think about what I was wearing, how I was showing up. And even one time I was very nervous, and my colleagues around me knew it. And they were like, oh, once you got into the groove, you were fine. Because I'm like, oh my gosh, it's the nervousness and the anxiety was there. And then once I got into it, I was fine. But so it's still there.
It kind of reminds me a bit about the conversation we were having before we started about this idea of climbing into cold water, right? That initial shock factor, because it is, if we think about it, if we're doing something out of our comfort zone, our amygdala immediately goes, this is not a good place. The fear factor kicks in, and it's full of adrenaline and full of cortisol, right? As we're getting rushed through it. And that generally makes all of our muscles come alive. 300-400 years ago, 1,000 years ago, it's because we were running away from something, right, that was going to kill us. But the reality is, if people realize that, to be honest, Catherine, your anxiety and that little butterfly, that never goes away, because if it goes away, it means you don't care. And I think people actually need to realize that is anxiety never really goes away, but it's about, so here's us, this is what's really crazy. Anxiety and excitement is exactly the same chemical experience in your brain. It's exactly the same. You cannot differentiate the two. If you look at from when they did CAT scans, all that stuff. So the thing we actually realize, it's purely your mindset. So if you're feeling that, instead of going, oh shit, I'm anxious, you should be going, oh God, I'm excited. Yeah. And it's about you shifting, you making that shift from, and fundamentally the physical experience you're experiencing is no difference to excitement. That was crazy when I learned that. Yes,
it's really good, and a lot of performers think like that, Mark. You know what you're saying is, even I, like all of us, probably still get a little bit of nerves when you're doing something. Catherine, you said when you're playing your guitar, you still get those nerves coming up, and it's you're right, Mark. It shows that you're bothered enough to want to do it well, or to perform to a certain level. So it's not something to shy away from. We've just got to embrace it and enjoy it and go, you know, what's the worst that can happen, really? I'm going to learn from it either way. I think that's one of the key things as well. It's like, if it doesn't work out the first time you try something, just go, what can I learn from it? I'm going to get even better. There's that whole, is it Thomas Edison with the light bulbs? 10,000 ways. Was it Thomas Edison? 10,000 ways it didn't work when he was trying to figure out how to do that. And it's like, well, actually, you learn from every one of those failures, and that makes you even better.
Yeah. I think the two dirtiest words in the English language are failure and perfection. And if you could take those two words and get rid of them and talk about what's the key learning, because you fail if you don't learn from what you've done. That's the only time I think you can ever use failure, is if you've done something and you repeat it again because you didn't learn from the first time. So I always say to my clients is, step into learning from the experience. Don't step into failure. And the other thing is, there's no such thing as perfection. It's unattainable. If you're a perfectionist, you will never, ever be happy with what you've done. It's so funny. I've had clients go in and for the first time deliver presentations to like 500 people. And I was going up to them, like, how was it? And they're like, you know what? I just wasn't really happy about the opening. And I was like, Jesus Christ, what do you mean? You're present. And I was there. It was amazing. But because they still carrying this perfection thing, they found fault, when in actual fact, their entire people were standing up, giving them a standing ovation, but they found the small thing rather than the other 99.9%, which was amazing. And I think that's the thing that I always try and help my clients with, is go, get rid of this word and stop using failure. It doesn't exist. It really is just about your mindset, you know?
Yeah, I love that. Getting rid of those two is powerful, because I use like mastery mindset, which means you never fail, but you're going towards mastery. How can I get even better? And then the goals you set, so for an example of it, doing that keynote, it's, you know, I crushed it. You know, ideal goal, I crushed it. Then there's the stretch goal. I got that standing ovation. Yeah. And then I showed up, you know, the minimum goal, I showed up. I stood on the stage and I showed up. I got there. So I never failed, but what can I do the next time that's even better to go towards that mastery? So that reflection 100%. And that learning.
Yeah. Because they're not doing that, right? They immediately go into the self-critique mindset, digging imposter syndrome, where if they at least had those 3 questions, where's the camera? 3 questions that you just identified, Nancy, I think people would just start looking at their life and being kinder to themselves. And that's the thing I think we as coaches are doing all the time, is helping them develop greater kindness and self-worth.
And that concept of perfectionism, it used to be something that, remember years ago, people in interviews would be like, oh, what's your biggest weakness? And perfectionism would be the go-to answer, to be like, well, I'm a bit of a perfectionist. That's a weakness, but it's a good thing. And I think over the years, people have started to realize, actually, practice makes perfection. Making mistakes along the way makes perfection. You can't be perfect straight away. So some people have still got that legacy view of perfection, and they still hold on to it. And as soon as we start to realize, actually, we're not going to move forward quickly enough, we're not going to do what we need to do compared to other people if we constantly fixated on perfection, the sooner we realize that, the better. It's even in terms of making mistakes, testing and learning, figuring out what works, what doesn't. In order to figure out the best outcomes, we need to go through the process, So for me, that's been a big learning, especially myself when I left corporate, and then starting my own business. It was the business plan that I put together and all these other things for my first business, which I spent ages on, did not matter. What mattered was putting in the practice and figuring out what do you actually need to do to grow something.
Yeah, which is so true. I always have fun when I go, so practice does what? And everyone goes, makes it perfect. I'm like, no, it makes it permanent, people. Come on. And that's always a fun little game, because Abigail's exactly what you describe. Is immediately people always go to this classic saying is practice makes perfect, where it doesn't. Practice makes permanent.
So why are there's so many things to unlearn.
So many things to unlearn.
It's the unlearning.
No one is perfect, and actually no one expects me to be perfect. So where does it come from?
Yeah, we judge ourselves way harder.
Yeah.
We get inspired by others when they're courageous and vulnerable and stepping in, and it looks brave in them and weakness in us. So what's that about?
Yeah. It's this idea of our ego tells us that vulnerability is bad.
That it's weak.
And if we show vulnerability, and if we show that in actual fact, hey guys, I'm absolutely shitting bricks because I'm so scared, guess what? People actually resonate with that, rather than this idea of I'm perfect, everyone's gonna love me,
if you say that, you're going to be less nervous anyway after that. As soon as you say something like that, you're completely fine.
Because the energy changes. Everyone suddenly connects with you now. You become human again, so
However, I do think social media has had a massive role to play, right, in this perfectionism thing. Like, you see someone who's overnight got this, sometimes I'll look on Instagram and I'm like, someone's got one post and they've got 50,000 followers or something, but you don't realize they might have had 5,000 posts before that they've decided to delete. So it looks like that they've got this super popular account. And you're like, how did they do that with a post of their, the breakfast that they made? I don't understand. And I think when we think about people like, I can't remember if it was Beethoven or Mozart, but when you think about these incredible artists and experts or performers, whatever, you think, oh, they're just like amazing at what they do. But then you find out that from an early age, when they were barely walking, they were playing the piano every day or doing whatever it was, practice. And by the age of 10, they're an expert. So we don't see the work that goes behind. Even I remember reading about Beyonce, and everyone's like, oh, Beyonce's got the same number of hours in the day as everyone else and all these things. And you think things like that, it's just superstardom happens. And there was stories where she was in the garden practicing with her friends, and her dad was managing everything along the way. So I think there's a lot in there of, we don't know what's happening behind the scenes that's shaping us and shaping others. So we can't compare our journey to someone else's. And often that's what holds us back. We go, that person's there and I'm there. I'm going to give up. I can't possibly do that.
Yeah.
Comparison is a killer.
It really is.
Let's try and be the best version that we can be, rather than try to be somebody we're not. Because guess what? When you try and be somebody else, you're usually pretty shocking at it. Unless you're a narcissist and maybe a psychopath, probably a different scenario. But I don't think we're trying to help, So I think that's the other thing is we got to realize is stop trying to be somebody else. And I think, Catherine, we talked about it earlier, is sometimes we don't even know what our authentic self is because we've never actually lived in that way. And going through that journey and that process, it is a process. And I think, if we think about all of us in the room here, we've put a lot of time in around understanding who we are, and it's a never-ending journey. But I think people also need to realize that for that to take place, you have to be willing to put in the time. It doesn't just come from reading a couple of books and suddenly, you've found who you are. You've got to go through the trenches, as they say, right?
And I guess when you do that, Mark, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. When you start to really know yourself and who you are and what you stand for and why you're doing what you do step into the fear more, into the out of the comfort zone, because you don't care as much about what other people think, because their opinion doesn't matter as much.
Yep.
Yeah, you're living in alignment with who you are, your values. You've got boundaries in place, so you're willing to say no if it's not in alignment with who you are. I think that gets a lot of people have a fear of saying no, and so they say yes to things they aren't in alignment with for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
But yeah.
We were discussing not this, but I just want to drop in as well what we were talking about before of doing 3 things or getting rejected 3 times a day. So pushing your comfort zone. And that's, the same kind of practice. So to take, let's say, 3 risks every day where you're probably going to get rejected. And then you're training your muscle to be said no to, but also probably in exchange, then you learn your own boundaries and you can say no more frequently because you're like, well, it's not that bad. It's not like I'm ending their life. And just in these other small exercises, I was just thinking earlier when it comes to judgment of others, the fear of judgment of others, I don't remember where I saw this as well, just like a little blurb of advice saying, do one thing that's really embarrassing every day, or not really embarrassing, but slightly embarrassing. So walk out into the street to get your coffee in your bathrobe or like with a face mask on yourself. And just these kind of, little things that aren't what's the worst that can happen. But slowly but surely you build that confidence that, well, I can just do me and have that, muscle trained. Is there anything like that you do in your life?
But Catherine, I think just to talk about that, I think if you look at the younger generation now, as you described, Abigail, social media is all about likes, right? That's what people are looking for is, I want to do something and I need affirmation from others, because if I don't get affirmation from others, it's a failure. And what you've just described, Catherine, is doing the exact opposite, is doing things without seeking affirmation and actually almost having the I don't really give a shit attitude. And if anything, that is building resilience, right? And I think that's why I'm really worried about the younger generation when I think about my nephews. Like, I DJ, and the first thing they asked was, Uncle Mark, how many YouTube likes do you have? I'm like, I don't know. I don't really care. And they're like, oh, that's lame. You need to have loads of likes. And I think the lack of resilience that potentially exists, because if they don't get a like, then they immediately go into the negative mindset. And I think you've described something very beautiful, Catherine, is actually we should be practicing resilience by just doing something without seeking affirmation. So many of my designer friends, people who are creative, are not putting their creative content out because they're scared that people might not like it. And I say to so many of my friends is, how about if you shouldn't really give a damn? How about if you just put it out anyway, just for the sake of putting it out? And they always go, God, but no, I don't know. And they're finding excuses all the time. And a lot of my close friends, I've actively been pushing them. We're like, guys, listen, put out your DJ sets. They're like, oh, somebody might not like. I'm like, no one really cares who actually listens to your set. And it's like 10 people. It's not like the whole world. And I think when people actually realize that it's not like, yes, you might be posting this online, but you know what? The entire world's population is not suddenly going to find your content and sit there and judge it. It's probably going to be your close friends on Facebook and on wherever, and they're going to be, a couple of them are going to like it. And that's probably it. But it's a start. And I think that's the key thing, is just to start being okay with not getting likes or bits of affirmation from others.
I think that's so powerful. And I think, sometimes even you guys might have experienced this on if you post on LinkedIn or something, sometimes people will contact me or connect with me or send me a message or talk to me and go, oh, I saw your post and it was really good about this or something else. I'm like, why don't you like the post? In my head, I don't say that out loud.
They never like, they never comment.
Yeah, but it just shows that you don't need to have
Exactly.
the physical thumbs up or whatever else, or the heart to make a difference to people. And it's just being aware of that. There are people who are going to be your cheerleaders and your cynics behind the scenes. You can't please everyone. So just do you, essentially. Just do what you need to do.
Yeah, and you don't know who you've impacted. You don't know. You have no idea, right? Because it could be just someone that never likes anything and never comments, but they could be exhausted, and what you post could be that light that they need or that inspiration that they're looking for in that moment or whatever it is. You know, and I remember I wrote, and this doesn't have to do with the likes, but I had written a really personal story and it was getting ready to be published my first time. And it was very personal stuff that I hadn't shared even with my closest friends were in the story. And I remember how scared I was in pressing the send button. But I'm like, gosh, if I can impact one person with my story, then it's worth it.
Yep.
And it was just telling myself that if this has a positive impact on one person, if they can relate to it or not feel so alone, then yeah, I'm good.
And that goes back to your purpose, I guess, Nancy. It's like, why you're doing it. You don't care about the other stuff in between. It's, I know why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Oh yeah, but the whole body was freaking out that, you know, it was
because you were putting it out there, right? It's the vulnerability. It's like the amygdala is going, don't do this. This is a bad idea. You're putting yourself up to be judged, you know?
Yes, people are going to know.
Yeah.
I feel that even, you know, with starting a business and our clients, that more, you know, the aspiring entrepreneurs and things, so much of it is the fear of failure. Like, what if you know, I'm not going to start this business because what if it doesn't become, not a unicorn, but, you know, what if it doesn't become super successful, or what if I don't do it perfectly? And then you know, I've always said that I was going to be an entrepreneur and that I have everything it takes, but what if I actually, you know, fall on my face? But if you just impact one person, and even if that person is yourself, that you show yourself, I managed to do this, and I stuck to my not stuck to my guns, but I did what I set out to do, and here is what I've created. Like, go you.
Yeah.
We need to have more of that. You know, we care so much about what other people think of us, but what about what you think of you? Where's that, you know, that nurturing of, like, how many likes do you give yourself?
Yeah, maybe we should start doing that. Maybe we should start, like, you know, just mentally giving ourselves likes.
I like all my LinkedIn posts.
Do you really? Yes. Oh, I don't do that.
You actually should, because of the algoritms, but I do like
I'm not sure if it knows that it's you though, but if it detects that it's yourself doing that. But
hey, why not, right?
I do. But yeah, maybe that's what you've identified, Catherine, is I think for all of us is maybe the first like in everything we do needs to actually be us saying to ourselves, you know what, I'm proud that I've actually produced this or put this out or tried this, because if I didn't, I'm only growing smaller, you know, and maybe that's got to be our focus is if I'm not going in my comfort zone, I'm going backwards. So, you know what, let's just put stuff out. Let's step into that space a little bit more.
Yeah. And if you don't do it, you're never going to succeed anyway. There's that whole, you know, everyone's heard that if you don't try, you're going to be in the same place anyway. One of the biggest things about, I guess, worrying about what other people think and comparing and all those kind of things as well. I remember when I first left banking, and it was a month, it was not even 30 days since I left banking, and I was like, oh God, this is a big thing to have done, to leave a stable industry and environment and job and career and go and do my own thing. And someone we used to work with, we'd gone for drinks and I caught up with them, and they're like, oh, are you making the same amount of money that you were making whilst you were in banking? And I, at that time, it was 30 days. I was like, oh, not yet, but hopefully soon, in my head, thinking I'm a failure because 30 days after leaving, I haven't got to the same level of money that I was at. But that's the mentality of some people as well. It's like, oh, you should be success is that, and what is our idea of success is what's important, and sticking to it till you're where you want to be.
You took the words straight out of my mouth, Abigail. I've got another business partner that I'm working with, and he was like, look, we're going to hire way more people. And I was like, no, we're not, because that's not what success is for me. Success for me is creating a robust partnership where me and you are sipping cocktails in the Bahamas and we're enjoying what we're doing. Success isn't working 7 days a week, 365 days, worrying about 40,000 people we've just hired, and I think that's the key thing. Is so many people try and attain their success to something they've seen on TV or some mogul or some guy. Guess what? When you speak to their family, he's got one wife and 47 other women that he's seeing. His kids are all delinquents because they never see their dad and their mom. Yet everybody assumes that's what success is. And I think people need to actually sit down and go, what is success for me? Is it time? Is it money? Is it work-life balance? Is it my family? What is it? And I think if we can get that really solid in our heads, we will make better decisions, and we'll be stepping into the right direction rather than stepping somewhere where it doesn't really resonate with us in the future.
Yeah, so that goes into that authenticity. Who am I? What is success to me? What is really important to have in my life? And and it's not running a huge company right now. It's doing the work I love and being able to do that.
If you do what you love, everything else will follow anyway. Again, it's going back to trusting the process, right?
Yes.
And jumping in sometimes, and you will sometimes have the setbacks, but acknowledging that's part of the journey that makes you even better. So even today, we probably make mistakes sometimes in our work, even if we've been doing it for a long time. And it's about, I mean, years ago, if I had really bad feedback on something, I'd have gone, oh my God, I'm never going to do that again. And I remember, might have been a couple of years ago, I ran a big virtual workshop and my energy was maybe dialed up a little bit too high because I was like, I've heard that I need to be really high energy for this session. And one piece of feedback at the end was I had a headache after the session and I had to take a paracetamol. And I don't know who sent that, but normally that would have stopped me from ever going, I never want to do another session again. But I had to go back in the next day, the next week and do it. And it's fine. But it was about.
Did you drop your energy, or did you keep it? Did you keep your high energy throughout, though?
Possibly, maybe too much, and didn't stop for air.
Because you know what? You ask any trainer or coach out there who ever seeks feedback, the first thing they always go to is the negative stuff, and they hold on to that. They'll have 99 pieces of positive reinforcement saying that's the greatest session I have, and one cynical douchebag has gone, I didn't like what you had to say about that. And then you're like, wow, I'm not good enough. I shouldn't do this, stuff like that. It's so crazy how one person can derail so much good. And I think that's the other thing we got to always focus on is, you know what? There's always going to be one or two people. If anything, there's something wrong with the world if everybody likes you. Then you should be worried. You should be seeking out the one person you go, thank God the world is still normal. If there's one or two cynical people, because they will always exist. They will always exist.
Exactly. So it's like shifting the mindset when you get that feedback. It's like, oh, that's fascinating. Their view of that experience. Is there something for me to learn from it? Right? Right? That's
how bad was their train trip into town today? Wow, they must have really just only slept 3 hours. Like that was out of everything I delivered. That's the one thing you felt that you would share. Fair play, mate.
It's and I think it's like having when we're doing this whole stepping out of our comfort zone, it's almost like putting on your armor to be, I'm going to get these kind of feelings coming from inside, but also deflecting all these things that come through. You can still take them on board, but actually just go, I'm going to still carry on regardless of what's coming at me, right?
Yeah.
Adding on to that, just the holistic coach aspect is also, we've talked so much about fear and about all of these, the perfection and all the things that we can do to break down those those beliefs and the things that we've learned. But there's also a whole part of, like, Mark, you doing your morning, cold swims, and maybe for some people it's meditating or doing yoga or going for a long walk or connecting with going walking barefoot in nature or dancing in your living room to a song that you love. And all these little things that don't just have to do with writing down or just pushing through of, okay, I'm scared but I'm going to do it anyway, but just getting your whole mindset right and prepared to be in the zone. And it's that self-care is also not just like, what do I do to perform the best at work, but how can I just nurture my human?
Yeah, I agree with it. Like I speak to a lot of my clients is about building positive rituals when you've got to step into a big moment. If you're going to go up on stage or do what it is, don't just have one night's sleep. And, we need to be prepared a week in advance. So when it comes to the night before, you're actually going to have a great night's sleep because you've prepared the best you possibly can. Whatever happens now, guess what? There's nothing you can do about it. You've done everything you possibly can to prepare for this moment. And I almost get them to complete a page that has a whole bunch of tick boxes. Have I done everything I can? Have I done this? Have I done? And they go, tick, 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 tick. And I go, how are you feeling? They're like, yeah. And I'm like, are you anxious or are you excited? And they're like, I'm both. I'm like, that's good. That's good. So I think that's the other thing is make sure that preparation is why people succeed. What's that saying? Fail to prepare and prepare to fail. I always get that one mixed up when I say it, but I got it right.
I think
you got it right. You got it right.
Yeah. And then trusting the process, knowing that everything that you've done has set you up for this moment, regardless of what happens.
Yeah. Exactly. Now it's time to, and I think that other word is now you've got to enjoy it. It's not about just surviving. Now you got to go in there and you've got to thrive, So it's that growth mindset. It's that inner self-belief where your talk is like, you know what, Catherine, I've got this. I've practiced on this guitar. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to jam. I'm going to just kick some ass. And I think you start to cultivate that.
That's a big part that you forget if you're not in the moment to just have fun. Like, why are you doing it if you're not here to have some fun?
Yeah, absolutely.
100%.
And that's
everything.
And if we're aligned, we will have fun, right?
And if we're present in the moment, we'll have fun and we'll enjoy it. If we're worrying about the future, that's
our audience feels it, right? If we talk about energy and we talk about, all the research around energy is when we're inward and we're in our heads, guess what? There's a disconnect between us and our audiences and the people we're trying to connect with. When you step out of your head and you step into connecting with others, you can immediately, when you've seen a performance of a band, when you're like, wow, that was amazing, the energy. Why? Because it's all about they came in and connected with you rather than you see some of these people who are just like, I'm going to play these songs however I want to play, and I don't really care if you guys like it or not. And you can immediately see the disconnect between our experience as listeners and those who are playing, So, performance is a key part of connection.
Do we have any closing remarks? Abby, did you want to do the visualization?
I can do. We'll take a couple of minutes. We got time or
a couple of minutes.
Okay. And then are you going to close after? Because I don't want to end us on a quiet. But I will do it. So if you can, close your eyes if you're comfortable to, and take a really deep breath in your own time, because everyone has different breathing rates, and breathe out. So breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth, and just keep doing these nice, slow, deep breaths. Okay. And now what I'd like you to do is start to bring to mind a picture of yourself 1 year in the future, when you have accomplished some of the big things on your wish list that you are hesitating to move forward on because of fear. So these are things that are really important to you, things that you want to do, things that you want to achieve, but that you are holding back on because of fear. And that could be fear of the unknown, fear of failure, fear of other people's perceptions of you, perhaps. So I want you to imagine that your fears do not exist in your situation. And you've achieved great things over the year, and none of your fears have become a reality during your journey to success. Nothing, nobody has got in your way or held you back. So picture yourself in 12 months' time and having achieved what you wished for. And think about how you feel. Where are you? Who is with you? Who is not with you? What do you sound like? What is your voice like? What is your tone like? What is your posture like? What are you excited about next? So take a deep breath in and inhale this sense of success and satisfaction, and breathe out any remnants of fear that may be lingering inside. You can breathe in through the nose and breathe out through the mouth if you want to. And take another deep breath in. Really enjoy this feeling of stepping into your potential and having developed in so many ways over the year. And breathe out in your own time. And when ready, take another inhale, breathe out, and slowly open your eyes. And that is it. Hopefully that helps.
I'm feeling good.
Been
Me
good,
too.
good.
Thank you.
Good. I kind of felt, when you were said posture, I kind of felt my body go.
I saw you do that, Catherine. I saw you do a little bit of a sit up. So it's good.
I'm doing it.
Fantastic. Love it.
Thank you so much. We'll have a recording of this conversation on YouTube and on our website on the toolkit. I'll send all of you the links and stuff. And I think this visualization exercise as well, I'll try to crop the video so that we can have that separately, because super valuable. Man, so many things that we covered. So I think the best way to wrap up is to say, I'm going to go back through all of this and make a key takeaways little toolkit post, because I think there's a few mindsets, activities, things that people can take back from this. Does anyone have any other closing comments that are more precise than mine?
I just want to say, get rid of perfection, get rid of failure, and step into learning and step into vulnerability. That would be kind of my little bits that I'd like to share. And Abigail, Nancy, what is your closes?
I'll just say courage over comfort.
And I'll say do something in the next 24 hours that is going to stretch that comfort zone a little bit.
Yeah, nice.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you soon.
Great. Thank you,
Cheers,
everyone.
everybody.
Thank you.
Leave comments.
Everyone.
Tell us what you think. We'd love to hear.